Thinking about retirement, a common question that people have is how much money do I need to have saved for retirement? And there's a couple rule of thumbs that we'll get into in this video, but that number that you need saved for retirement is going to be different for every single person depending on your situation, your lifestyle, and the amount of guaranteed income that you know you'll have coming in. Thinking about retirement, you want to start to paint that picture of what you want retirement to look like for yourself, right? And what does that mean? Well, is your retirement on a beach somewhere? Are you maybe just working part-time? Maybe you got a job as a captain at a golf course, right? Starter captain, so you can play free rounds of golf all the time and have fun. Maybe you're hanging out with your grandchildren and traveling all over the world. So retirement's going to look different depending on what your idea of retirement is. The amount of money you're going to need is going to be different depending on what retirement looks like for you. Also, your primary place of residence in retirement is going to change the amount of money you need, right? If you live in a high property tax state, high income tax state, right, you're going to need more money coming in just to pay those taxes, even if you own your primary residency outright. So maybe if you're in the Northeast or on the West Coast, you might need more money than if, say, you're in the South or, Midwest somewhere that maybe tax rates are lower, property tax isn't as harsh. And so those things definitely will factor in. But let's start to talk about some of the rules of thumb, right? When we get into how much your portfolio can sustain, there was a paper written back in the middle 90s by a guy named Bill Bengen, and he wrote a paper called the 4% rule. And the 4% rule basically says that looking back throughout history, every 30-year period of time, he researched and he came up that the only number that was successful for withdrawal from a plan or from a portfolio that could sustain a 30-year period was 4%. So what does that mean for you? Well, if you have $1 million, 4% is $40,000 a year. So you have to start to think about, in that sort of context, well, do I have guaranteed income? And if I do, how much is that going to be? If I don't, well, how many $40,000 increments do I need to live the lifestyle that I want to live? And that's kind of going to give you a rule of thumb of how much money you should have saved. By doing that, that gets us through a 30-year period. And for most couples that are married, you can suspect that one of the two in that couple will live about 30 years in retirement. It could be much more as things advance, right? How many people do you know today that are in their late 90s or living into their hundreds? It's a whole lot more than, say, 20 or 30 years ago, right? And so when they're doing planning today and we're talking about a 30-year period, well, we got to start to think about, is 30 years enough? And for all of you younger generation that are really fixated on that FIRE movement of becoming financially independent and retiring early, well, what if you retire early and now your retirement is not 30 years, maybe it's 40 or 50 years? And what kind of number do you need to sustain that? On top of this, we have a whole set of economic factors that we need to think about, right? We need to think about inflation, and will inflation rear its ugly head and continue to be that stealth tax eroding our spending power? Do we have to worry about taxes coming into play and the government increasing the taxes, right? Depending on where we saved our money, we could be fully taxed on that $40,000 that we're taking out every year. So these are things to consider, right? So if we go back and we do the math and we just use the 4% rule, 4% may not be good enough for you, right? Or maybe you're thinking to yourself, I don't know if I'll ever be able to save enough $1 million to get to the number that I need, right? Maybe it's 3 million, maybe it's 5 million, maybe it's 10 million, depending on your lifestyle. There are other solutions, other avenues, and ways to increase the sustainability of that portfolio. A lot of times we talk about actuarial science and investment science and how we marry the two of those to help our clients create a higher, more sustainable income stream. Those are things that you want to be able to think about and start to incorporate into your portfolio. Because if you're setting your retirement goals on 8 or 10% returns in the stock market, and that's all you're thinking is going to happen, well, markets don't return that every year. And what you really need to think about, and the reason Bill Bengen came up with the 4% rule, is because when he looked back in history, what mattered when you took money out of the market was your actual rate of return in that year, not the average over a course of time. So these are things to consider when you're talking about building this retirement portfolio and how much money do I need to have saved for retirement. I'm hoping that you like this content, and if you do, please hit that like button. For more education and you're continuing your journey to really figure out what you need for retirement, check out a video over here. But if you are ready to speak to somebody and you need to have a conversation, in the description box below, fill out the link and a member of our team will reach out to you.